So John and Anna, I really genuinely am pleased to be with you today and to have you speak to our audience, to hear more about your work and more about the new book, The Go-Giver Marriage, a little story about the 5 secrets of lasting love, which I'm very interested in hearing about, and I know our audience is. So tell us a bit about, I know the original Go-Giver book that had been out some time ago was kind of a brand book, reached a lot of people. How did you come to do a Go-Giver Marriage?
Yeah, well, the original Go-Giver, and that did come out 14 years ago. It's hard to believe, but that's the truth. It came out in 2008, and it was aimed at the business world, at the business community, particularly entrepreneurs and small business people. And it was enormously popular in that community. But it was really the way my friend Bob, my co-author, and I conceived that book. It was really kind of a life principles book. I mean, yes, it was for business people, but it was broader in intention and broader in implication than that. And yet, that's the community we served. And so we had a contract with our publisher to do some follow-up books in that. We did a Go-Giver book on sales, and we did a Go-Giver book on leadership. And then there was a Go-Giver book on how to have genuine influence in the world. And these were all around business and influence largely. But from the very first, when the rough draft of the Go-Giver came off my desktop printer a few years before we found a publisher and it came out, my wife, Anna, whose life has been devoted to helping families, particularly couples, have more rich, fulfilling, happy lives. Now, this has been her life work. She read that first manuscript and said, "This book is awesome, and it would be a great book on marriage." So we've had that idea, for going on 20 years practically now. And it just took some timing to let the other books play out and find their niche and find the time for us to wait until the timing was right for this one. It's been our intention from the start, and we're just thrilled that it's finally here.
I want to just ask you right at the outset, I'm given my background in therapy and marriage and family counseling and in the business world, I'm guessing that the original book with the entrepreneurs and the business people resonated with probably a larger group of men in that field. And I'm just wondering what the new book might speak specifically to men, and then we'll get in. Obviously, it speaks to women and couples. But could you say why you're still on the original Go-Giver audience? What might this speak to men in a way that might be surprising to them?
I think that it was I've been told by all my publishers that the primary audience for these books, personal development books, leadership books, business books, and books on self-improvement in general, the primary audience is women. That's like the accepted wisdom in publishing. And in fact, statistically, women read books more than men do. At least that's what I've been told. I think that with the Go-Giver, we actually had a preponderance of women, if anything. But the men who resonated with the Go-Giver were particularly men in management, men in leadership, men in coaching, or roles where they were supporting other people, other teams. And they were looking for a model that wasn't so kind of top down and wasn't so command and control, and wasn't so traditionally masculine, if I can use that phrase in kind of a hackneyed way, a more sensitive way. And so I think it touched a chord there. But we had people from the start saying to Anna and me, "When are you guys going to write about relationships?" I think Anna was picking up on that maybe even more than I was.
Well, let's get into that more. Talk a little bit about the 5 secret about marriage, the 5 secrets. I think that's intriguing. I think it's something that that people want to know about. Talk a little bit more about where that fits, both from the original book and now into this one on the Go-Giver marriage.
Well, it goes way back. And I actually trained with Harville and Helen back in the 80s, right before Getting the Love You Want was published. And I was already a therapist at that time. And I had initially, in coming out of grad school, I had spent several years training with someone who was Gottman trained. So, and we did a lot of couples work. We did couples groups. We did all kinds of work together. So, you know, there was a basis for the 5 secrets that was coming out of some of the things that can really destroy marriages and some of the ways that we really dismiss and ignore and criticize and control and all of the different things that can really start to tear marriages apart. So the philosophy of the Go-Giver is really about adding value to the other person's life without the expectation of return. And you as a therapist, Jed, know that, you know, the hallmark of codependent relationships is that you give only with the expectation of getting. You know, there's the little scorekeeper, as we like to call it, is always enabled and active. And so our direction in the book is really about first dropping the scorekeeper and recognizing, and it's really more about becoming aware of your scorekeeper. Become aware of the place in you that's trying to make the marriage transactional instead of what it is, authentic, real, an intimate relationship. And to create behaviors that lend themselves to joining and also to building the esteem of your partner, to attending to and taking care of your partner. So the secrets are really not about becoming a martyr or a doormat, as in somebody who gives to the point of not having a self, but rather ways that you can actually look for and examine every day opportunities to give to your partner in ways that you're not expecting a return. You're simply doing it to benefit their lives and benefit their day.
Oh, that's good. You mentioned Harville, and I just, for those that don't know who we're talking about in the marriage field, Harville Hendricks and his wife Helen are probably some of the most well-known and well-respected people in the field.
Absolutely.
And I know they gave you, in fact, that was how I met you and was introduced to you. I get their newsletter, and they had mentioned that this new book was coming out, and they offered a quote that was very, very powerful and touching, and like, whoa, well, if they're, you know, behind you, this must be worth checking out. And you mentioned your longtime connection with them, but even beyond that, I suspect that for them and you, this was an important book that they spoke highly of. Could you say a little more about kind of what resonated in their experience with your book?
Well, we really believe that everyone brings their emotional history from their childhood to every single relationship they're in. But in a personal, intimate relationship like a marriage, that is where all the material shows up. And so ideally, you not only acknowledge that for yourself, but you acknowledge it for your partner, and you have compassion and awareness as material starts to rise. If one of you has an anxiety disorder and you have a little bit more going on with control issues, then, you know, it's important to own that, to be able to navigate the territory and to be able to stay on the same page. You know, I'm not trying to control you. I'm just feeling really nervous right now. I'm feeling anxious. To be able to just stay in growth mode, if you will, where you're acknowledging the material that you have. Harville and Helen have done a brilliant job of really developing that into a full-blown theory that really allows couples to just open up and wake up to the fact that if you had a controlling father who was always dismissing you, or you had an absent father, you know, you're going to bring that material into the marriage. You might marry somebody who's controlling and critical, or you might be controlling and critical, but you're going to bring that material forward. And until you become enlightened enough and awake enough and aware enough to understand it, and for both of you to have compassion for that material, the marriages can sometimes be on a rocky place where, you know, fights break out over nothing, and, you know, things are really difficult. So the 5 secrets are really designed to sort of keep you practicing, because love isn't a static experience. It's not that romantic zing that you had when you first met. It's an ongoing experience of living in the same home and going through life together, and stuff happens. And so if love is a practice, then it's something you're practicing every day, ideally. So that's what we're really aiming toward, is to treat it like a meditation practice or a prayer practice. That, you know, if you have that kind of practice, you understand you have to approach it every day.
Indeed. Well,
You know, I just going to mention, Anna
yeah.
said this thing about how little fights break out over nothing. And that's so true. I mean, it's amazing sometimes how the littlest thing that really doesn't mean anything at all can become such a huge sticking point, because it does mean something. But what does it mean? It doesn't mean the coffee cup or the socks on the floor or the forgotten birthday of the mother-in-law, or, you know, it doesn't mean what it is. It means something altogether else. It's the tip of an iceberg. So what's the iceberg? It's all this material, you know, Anna's talking about. What we tried to do with the 5 secrets is just give simple daily actions, behaviors that people can do, because it's wonderful to say, I'm going to try to change my mindset. But, you know, a mindset is a big thing to change. But it's, you know, it's like an ocean liner, and you change it with the tugboat. And the tugboat are the things we do every day, the behaviors we do every day. So the 5 secrets, you know, it's a tantalizing subtitle, but the secrets aren't really secrets. They're really simple daily behaviors, habits almost.
Well, it's good to know. And what you both mentioned that I think is so important is that often the experiences from the past, the adverse childhood experiences, they call them, or the, you know, early trauma that are so common in people's lives, and really true in most all our relationships, that when we're in connection with the partner, we are sensitive, we're hypersensitive. I say, like, we're emotionally sunburned, so anything can trigger a reaction. And you talk about the scorecard that we, I think, almost inevitably start keeping, you know, that, ooh, if I'm not getting from you, then I'm going to wait. You, as soon as you treat me well, then I'll. So talk a little bit about that scorecard you mentioned, and how do we let go of that?
Yeah, I think, you know, something we often find ourselves saying to people is the way to get rid of a bad habit is to replace it with a good habit. Because that scorecard that you're talking about, gosh, Jed, that's, you know, it's almost addictive. It can be like, people have told us that when they become aware of the degree to which they criticize their partner, sometimes out loud, but just as frequently silently in their minds. They're just running that script in their head, but not quite saying it out loud because they don't want to be that obvious, right? When they become aware of that and try to stop it, they'll say, this is like going through withdrawal. It's like trying to stop smoking, you know, or quit alcohol or a drug or something. And it is, isn't it? It's really a drug, because I guess we get our endorphins. You know, there's a rush to that because you get to feel right. You get to feel superior. You get to feel kind of morally, you get to feel your own moral rectitude at the other person's expense. And I guess that's nice. Sweetheart, go ahead. You're going to say something.
I just want to add to that the ego is always looking to win. And in any relationship, the ego is keeping score. It's really your ego. And it's your ego jumping in and saying, I'm right, you're wrong, and you need to listen to me, or you need to change. When in fact, to shift a marriage, you need to grow yourself. This is not about looking at your partner with your hands on your hips and saying, this is what's wrong and you need to change it. You have to change your attitude. You have to become aware of the way you bring yourself to the relationship. I mean, these are little components, but they're huge components because it demands a certain amount of emotional awareness and emotional intelligence, if you will.
Well, you talk about the five secrets, and I hear that they're really not secrets. They're really practices that can really make a difference in relationship. Do you each have a favorite or some favorites of the five secrets that you each resonate with?
We always say that we have no favorite children, and we actually have 5 children. So
Well, I have 5 children too, my wife and I, and we say the same thing, but we know each child has some differences, and different times
absolutely.
we feel an affinity to
They're all
some more
different.
than others.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you one little thing that that viewers might be interested to know, because every marriage goes through its trials and tribulations. And in the parable side of the Go-Giver marriage, the couple, Tom and Tess, the challenge that they've been going through for the last 6 years is they have a child with special needs. And that child is the center of everything, because those special needs have taken over their marriage. And we put that story together exactly that way, because we're trying to illuminate for people that, life happens and you don't know what's going to happen. There could be a miscarriage, or, a lost baby, or, so many things that impact the way you're managing your life. But that a child with special needs is huge, because you have 18 years in front of you of negotiating that child's special needs. So that was intentional, because we both have children with special needs. So together we have multiple children with special needs. And neurodiversity does not get enough attention or time in our culture, just like men and their psychological and emotional needs don't get enough time in our culture, because men are really given the message that they need to buck up, they need to be strong, they need to be capable, they need to be successful. The pressures are enormous. So the first secret is one that I love, and I love it especially because I know many, many men that respond to this secret, and I mean really respond positively. It is the secret to appreciate. And specifically what it is, Jed, is to take 3 opportunities. And that's where we start people, is with 3, but often we have clients that are doing 4 or 5 or 6 opportunities a day, to stop your partner and to tell them in authentic and very sincere terms something that they are doing or that they do that you love and that you appreciate about them. And so it can be as simple as, one of my clients stopped her husband and said, when I listen to you talk to our children, I just feel really blessed that you are their father, because you're so good with them and they adore you. And I just feel like it's just like a blessing to our family. And she said he is never without words, and he welled up with tears in the moment and basically said, thank you. It's what I care the most about. I want to be a good father. Now, he is somebody who had an alcoholic father who was very dismissive and very absent. And so, yeah, being a great father means everything to him. And so that one little moment of appreciation spun the whole rest of the day in a different way for him and for her. And when you take the time to do this multiple times a day, intimacy warms up. The entire relationship gets much more profound. And yet people think, oh, appreciation, that's so simple. My wife knows I appreciate her. My husband knows I appreciate him. But it's the taking the time to express it and to really let them know, and to make sure that it's real and authentic, that it's something that is measurable and real, that they will respond to.
Yeah, and I think that yes, your wife knows you appreciate her. Yes, your husband knows that. But life wears you down like the surf on stones on the beach. I mean, it scrubs you and abrades you, and there's so many stresses in the environment and circumstance that it wears off. You forget, you need refueling. You need your battery charged again. And I think just the way children need to be built up and told, look at you. Look at how big and strong you are. Look at how tall you are. You can reach the faucet now. Well, the child in us still needs that today. I know that when Anna tells me, your writing is so amazing, it's like, I already know that she thinks that, but it doesn't matter. When she says it to me, which she does frequently, I feel myself go, really? You think that? And I see her do the same thing. I tell her, this book, because I've written 4 other Go Giver books, right, with a co-author. I said, and this is our first book together. And when I tell her this, I am so glad you wrote this book with me, because I felt comfortable with the parable. But if you didn't write that second half, it wouldn't be the book it should be. I mean, you made this book so much better, because the stuff you have to say is so valuable and you say it so well. And I'll tell her that. And she already knows I think that, but you can see right now she's reacting to that. So we need these things. And here's the magical, almost alchemical thing that happens. When you start to put this in practice, and we often find that people, particularly men, for some reason, feel a little awkward about this. It's like, okay, here's my homework. I'm supposed to tell my wife something I love about her. Okay, what exactly? How do I, honey? I think your cheeks are pretty. I mean, what do I say? It's like, what do I say exactly? And we just say, you know what? Awkward is okay. Awkward is great. She'll love the awkward. That's okay. Just do it, man. Just do the exercise, and then just do it again tomorrow, and do it again the next day. And you'll find your legs. You'll find your rhythm, and she'll get the authenticity of it. And here's the magical alchemical thing that happens as you keep that practice going. The scorecard disappears, because the habit of looking for things to appreciate starts to edge out the habit of looking for things to criticize. It's almost like you've got a new scorecard, but it's a positive one. Okay, today I have to find 3 new ththings about Anna that I adore. My brain is too busy to say, I can't believe she left the toothpaste cap off the, or whatever the thing is that we get annoyed about. Fringe benefit.
It's great, because the more I hear the secrets and hear the practicality of them and the action-oriented way that you do them, it makes sense. I see it in my own marriage, my own life. I know you've seen my website, Men Alive, where I talk about, I introduce myself as the guy that was the confessions of a twice divorced marriage counselor. And
I love that. I have to tell you, I love that. That's so great.
Too.
It's so great.
Just to add to the story, as it applies to what you just said, is that part of the first divorce really was about the stress of having a special needs child. That we had a son. In fact, in college, we said, as we fell in love, we're going to get married. We said we would have a child and then adopt a child. So we had a child, a boy. That was part of it. And we thought in college, when we were young, that since there were a lot of children in the world that might need parents, and why do we bring another child in an already crowded world, we would adopt a child. And we did. We adopted a little girl, but she had special needs, much more than we had anticipated, and really much more than they had told us. And exactly what you were saying, it ruled our lives. She didn't sleep for 2 years, literally. And we were up constantly rocking her and taking care of her. So she just came for a visit. The good news is she survived, we survived. And she just was here actually about 3 weeks ago to celebrate her 50th birthday.
Oh, that's so incredible.
And she has four children of her own. And so I just want to acknowledge that there are these things that happen, I see with many families and many couples when children come, whether they're special, they all have special needs in the way that each children is different.
Yes.
But I think recognizing both the importance of accepting those wounds, being able to see how they influence and impact our lives, and then in our couple relationship, the necessity, regardless of what's happened, for these practices. It isn't enough just to know it, you have to do it. So thank you for that. I'm going to look down at my notes here because we've been talking so well. I've kind of lost track of what I wanted to ask you. Uh, um, so maybe talk a little bit more about the behaviors that can damage relationships and marriages and why that is.
Well, that'll give John an opportunity to hit another secret as well.
Oh, good. Well,
by giving its opposite.
Yeah, lovely. So appreciate, by the way, which we were just talking about, is in our lexicon, it's secret number one. And one reason that it's number one is that it's so easy to understand. It's easy to demonstrate. It's also easy to put in practice. And I think in some ways they become more subtle as they go up the scale from 1 through 5. The secret that I'll mention now is our number 3 is less obvious. We use the word allow. It's the secret of allowing. And allowing to us means it's kind of similar to the concept of grace. It means giving the other person the benefit of the doubt, giving them a little extra space, a little extra time, a little extra support. It is the natural outgrowth of throwing out the scorecard, because it is the result of realizing marriage is not fair. That's not its constitution. It's not the point. It's not where you each keep track of who's even with whom. So there will be times, and we spoke about a few, where life becomes exceptionally difficult. Somebody has an injury or has an illness, or one of your parents dies, or you lost your job, or whatever. These things occur. We use the example of special needs child, but I'll use the example of a miscarriage. So in my first marriage, because I too am I was going to say divorce counselor, but I'm not really a counselor. Anyway, I am in this club. In my first marriage, we had a miscarriage early on, and it was devastating for my wife, and it was devastating for me too. But I didn't grasp how devastating it was for her. It was a different experience for her than it was for me. Later on, we actually lost a child. We had our first child died just shy of our first birthday. It's something you don't wish on any parent, right? This was utterly devastating for both of us, but it was devastating for both of us in different ways. We didn't know how to make room for the other one. And so just back to the miscarriage, it's easy to, and Anna speaks about this frequently, very eloquently, in the case of a loss or something like this, it's very easy for people grieve in different ways. One person may, in a month or two, start to feel like, okay, can we move on? That was sad, this was terrible, but we've got our lives to live. Let's kind of move on. And the other person just doesn't want to move on, is still grieving. That's common. In fact, I think it's one of the main reasons why the death of a child so frequently presages the split of a couple. We grieve in different ways. We suffer the loss of a job in different ways. We suffer headaches in different ways. We suffer bad sleep last night in different ways. We need to give each other room. So that's what allowing is. Allowing is, and the simple practical action is, take a breath. When you start to feel like, why can't he just, or why can't she just stop? Take a breath and picture yourself and your partner standing on the same side of the room, looking at the issue in front of you, as opposed to on opposite sides of the room, looking at the issue between you. Stay on the same team. Realize that if they're stressed out, if they're cranky, if they're irritable, if they're grouchy, it's probably not really about you. It's about whatever they are going through. So give them a break. Be a little extra loving. Be a little extra supportive. That's really the spirit of allow. And as Anna says, the opposite of allow is the destructive behavior, the toxic behavior of control. I need you to grieve for this the same way I grieve. I want you to get over it as quickly as I get over it. I want you to be the way I think you should be. So destructive, so pernicious, and so easy. I think this is a bit, I'm going to yield the mic, but I think this is a big one for men particularly, because I think that as much as society has jokes about controlling women, control is men's breakfast cereal, right?
It is. And I think that, the other thing about allow is it's really about individuation and differentiation. It is really about allowing the other person to be themselves, to be who they are, and to not try to control who they are or the expression of who they are. And so control is a huge thing, because anyone who's been through any kind of trauma, okay, so you had a special needs child. We all have special needs children. I didn't sleep for 2.5 years after my first child was born. John and I have both lost a child, and in a previous relationship. And in both cases, it destroyed the marriage. So, when you look at the things that happen, allowing for the other person to have a bad day and for it to be okay, the secrets still allow you a lot of ways to give them grace. When John is having a particularly bad day, or has just gotten some bad news about a book or something of that sort, I don't rush in and say, so what's wrong? Tell me about it. My question is always, if there's anything I can do to make your day better, please let me know. I am here and I will serve whatever you need. And it's just a way of gesturing to him that he doesn't have to explain it to me. I'm not going to try to put him on the hot seat to process it, because I think that, just like men want to go off to their corner and avoid the hard feelings sometimes, that's how they handle depression and how they handle difficulty. Women, I think, want to get their nose right in the middle of it and process it right now. And they want you to tell them in detail how you feel about it, when you can't even figure out what you're feeling, let alone describe it. And so I think there's all these ways that couples are constantly missing each other. And the secret of allow really is for better or for worse, in richer and in poorer, in sickness and in health. I broke my leg and didn't walk for 1.5 years. John had to instantly become the guy who made dinner, because there was no way I could stand up or even crutch myself around the kitchen.
It was a really complicated break.
Yeah. And, those are the moments when you have to pick up the slack. And that's where allowing, and he never did it with any kind of grudge or any kind of disgruntled feeling. He just did it because it was what was demanded at the moment. And that's what allow is really about. It's that grace.
It would be so easy in moments like that, like when Anna's was her knee, really, it was shattered in 24 places. It was just awful. It would be so easy in situations like that to say the thing that I've heard men say often, which is, I didn't sign up for this. And my response is, oh yeah, you did actually. You signed up for everything. That's the truth. You don't get to control which part of the deal you signed up for and which part you didn't. You don't get to control circumstance. You don't get to control the other person. So just, take a breath and do it, participate, and stay on the same team.
And get aware of the part of you that's controlling, because I came out of a family with, primary family with a depressed mother who was irritable and very controlling. And the way that played out for me was that I was constantly watching and anticipating her next move to make sure, so I lost a lot of ground developmentally. When you have to attend to a parent, you're not attending to your own needs. So I think that when, there's any kind of trauma in your history, you're really going to have a much greater need to control. And you've got to get a grip on that. Just like paying attention to your scorekeeper, pay attention to the part of you that wants to control the narrative of your relationship or the relationship itself.
You're bringing up an issue I want to kind of go a little deeper into, because I think it's true for many, many people that are watching this and people in their lives, which is that we've all had multiple intimate relationships of one kind or another. We come from a family with a certain experience, and then we left that family, and many of us had a relationship or a marriage, and then that ended for one reason or another. And I think one of the things that I know I experienced, a little bit about my story of twice divorced marriage counselor, and my wife Carlin and I now have been married and happily and challenging, but happy and with learning for 42 years now. But what I see with many couples, and I'd be interested in your take on this, that often there's a either conscious or subconscious belief, if they've been through a bad relationship, whether it was the one in their family growing up or a previous marriage, that inevitably it's just not going to work. Something's going to happen that's going to, and you just got to prepare yourself for, when things happen that you're gonna, and you begin pulling back even before it happens. And I think what I'm hearing from both of you, and certainly from my own marriage, my own experience, is you really can have the kind of relationships that we all long for, and they really can be loving and passionate and last a long time, a lifetime. But you need to recognize some of the things that you carry into it, and you need to be willing to do some of the things that are required. When you say, I didn't sign up for this, well, you can, if you're willing to hang in there and go deeper and learn some of the things. You may find you're signing up for not more disaster, but the really beautiful, passionate love that you've always wanted, that maybe you haven't had up until now.
Oh gosh, that was beautiful. Yes. I just want to say, yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I mean,
I not only
ahead,
agree,
sweetheart.
but I not only agree, but I also think that it goes back to, the roots of your emotional history and the way that it interacts. And yet most of us don't ever really, once we get to adulthood, we want to shed that emotional history and never remember it. And I think that if there was more education and training as we're going into marriages about the unconscious material that we bring to relationships, because that's the material that rises up. It's the unconscious stuff. And I love the way you phrased it, Jed, because it really is, when somebody has already been through something and they are kind of backing up. I think that's the cornerstone of ambivalence. I think that a lot of times people don't want to get closer because they're that fear that it's not, either the closeness will hurt them because they've been hurt when they tried to get close to a parent, or they're afraid that the relationship won't make it and they really don't want to feel the pain of it ending. So they just stay in that distant, I'm not going to quite emotionally commit place of ambivalence. And ambivalence is really a real thing in relationships, where people just stay in that place where they're kind of on hold. And they don't really get into the deeper places where intimacy wakes up and where intimacy is delicious and amazing because you're so close to the other person in a way that's really human, where your pain can be witnessed and where your happiness can also be shared.
I so resonate with what Anna just said, and also Jay, with what you said before. I grew up in a family where my father was just the inveterate peacemaker. He was the absolute diplomat, such a gentleman. He moved here during World War II from Europe, and he was this classic old world European scholar. And what I learned is how to be a peacemaker. And so what did I do? I married into a family that was like a war zone. I mean, literally, the police would show up at 2 a.m. to separate people who were trying to physically kill each other at her house. Drunken, brawling, alcoholic family, very, very wealthy, crazy. I parachuted myself down into this family, not aware of what I was doing, to practice my peacemaker skills. And that marriage did not go well. And I didn't have a clue what was happening. When Anna and I fell in love, I wanted to get married right now, immediately. And she said, I think we should take some time. And I think that was code for, I think you should take some time, because I really needed to, because I honestly didn't have any idea what went wrong before. And what I needed was, Anna talks about people need some education and recognizing that unconscious material. That's what I needed. And so we've been together for a quarter century, but the first 10 years of that, you could say courting is the old fashioned word. We didn't get married for 10 years. We spent that much time, for me, learning about myself and my history and what it meant and why it was there. And I'll tell you that by the time we tied the knot, as they say, I mean, not only do we adore each other, but our marriage is just like a gelatin mold. It'll wiggle, but it never really moves. We're just so solid together. So it was worth the wait and the introspection.
That's fascinating. I don't know if we have so many things in common, but my second marriage was with a woman who slept with a gun under her pillow. I didn't know that until we got married, and we were in bed and the pillow moved and I saw the gun. And as a guy that grew up in a very passive, nonviolent household, it was like, oh my God, what have I gotten into?
Yes.
But it was crazy and chaotic, but somehow I thought I could fix it. I asked her about the gun. Why did she need a gun?
Yes.
And she explained that in her previous relationship, she had gotten a gun to protect herself against men.
Yeah.
And I kind of looked and I thought, yeah, that
I'm one of
does
those.
not bode well.
Yeah, I'm part of that group.
Exactly. So the experiences from the past, I think we certainly carry with us. We can learn from them. We can grow from them. We can, with help and support. And I'm wondering, as I think about what I've gotten from the support from my now 42-year marriage to Carlin, and thinking about your book, we know that women tend to read books as a group more than men do. But clearly this is a book that men and women would enjoy and benefit from. Do you need both people to be reading the book and following the guidelines in order for it to work? Or do you recommend it? What's your feeling about the book and how it gets done by a couple?
Well, we certainly have had couples read the book together, and that's a wonderful thing. We applaud it when that happens. We've also had just one member of the couple read the book, and that actually works beautifully, in part because there is a character in the book who was a marriage counselor, a marriage therapist, who shifted her career at one point to become what she called a marriage coach. And the shift in her practice was to begin coaching individuals. So if she was coaching a couple, she would coach the two individuals one at a time. So the person would enter the room, not in the context of the couple dynamics, but just as themselves with the therapist or the coach in this case. And that mirrors Anna. Anna has done the same with her career. She's really shifted to working with individuals. Because we like to say, when you work on a marriage, you don't work on your marriage, you work on yourself. And in terms of the men versus women, I just want to say to men listening, I think I may have said this before, I want to stress, this book isn't about you have to completely change your personality. You have to completely overhaul your character. You have to remake yourself from the ground to the crown. No, it's not like that. These are practical behavioral steps. And I think that men often want something they can get their fingers on, something practical. Give me a task I can accomplish. It's one reason that we make it so step by step. In the second half of the book, we actually lay out here's where you start, A, B, C. So that's, we try to accommodate both right brain and left brain, male and female perspectives in the application of the idea.
And in The Secret of Allow, we even give advice directly to men, which is, men can be real fixers. She's got an emotional problem and they want to rush in and take care of it. And, we remind them to just let her talk. John and I have a joke in our relationship, which is,
Not a joke.
It's so sweet, actually, that when your wife is on a tear about something emotionally, say she had a hard day at work and she's mad at her boss or whatever, and she's just come home and she's spouting about it, the best thing you can do is just listen and listen and listen, and every couple of minutes say, the bastard, and then keep listening. And we often share that in workshops that we do, because it makes the men just howl, because they all know they want to jump in and fix her problem. And the women all know they don't want him to fix the problem. They simply want him to hear them. And so it's a great moment of making everyone laugh, but it is in fact, real advice. You can commiserate without fixing her problem.
Well, I think two things you said I think are worth underlining. One is that men really do want to do things. And I'll often hear from couples when I see them individually or together is that he'll say, I just want to know what to do. I ask her and she doesn't tell me, or it isn't clear, or she tells me, well, if I have to tell you, it isn't worth it. I mean, you should know it. And the idea that
We don't.
the guys really, I don't know, I really don't. I want to, but I don't know. And so really, I think what you're saying, and maybe it comes from the kind of the business aspect of the original book, that if you can just give very simple things and then you do them, whether you get a response or not, whether you think it's going to work or not, whether you think it's going to make her life, you just do them. It's part of your practice. It's part of your ethic, your work. Guys get that. And then when they do things that in fact make things better, then the long range, wow, woo, this actually does make a difference. But
Yes.
Sometimes you just got to start and do it first.
That's so true. It's
It's
so true.
And attending to the other person's needs in specific ways can be really powerful. So, we had a couple that we worked with that, he discovered that the key to intimacy with his wife on the weekend was to do a load of laundry on Friday night as soon as he got home from work, and to get it folded, and especially with the kids stuff.
Mhm.
And he said just to take a little burden off of her, because they were both working, he said she would be so warm and so available because she felt so taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so we're getting kind of close to the end of time, and I want to have you say a couple of things, maybe more specifically about what you want the people out there who I think are all interested in relationships and wanting to have good relationships. What do you want them to get from your book? There's so much there. What, do you have some nuggets that you'd like to point direction to?
I think what I would say is that, we have a model in the book. And again, this sounds so simple, but it's so easy to forget in the heat of stress. We have a very simple model in the book. Each person is represented by a circle. There's me and there's you. And when you move in together and begin a life together, the circles overlap. You're still two whole independent people, but now there's this new space between you, which is like an elliptical third entity. And it is like an organism. It is like a third person in the room, practically. There's you and there's me, and then there's the us. And we represent this by a tree. Whoops, over here, tree. And that's why there's a tree in the book, which is a symbol of, tree is a symbol of life. In this case, it's a symbol of the marriage. And at each moment when you're together, you're either feeding the us or you're starving the us. Because the us is a living thing. It's never neutral. It's not like a machine you can just unplug for a day. It's either growing. It's like Andy Dufresne said in Shawshank Redemption, right? Comes down to one simple thing. You either get busy living or get busy dying. Well, that's your marriage. You're either feeding it or you're starving it. So when you start to come at everything, at every daily thing from that perspective, right now, am I feeding our marriage or am I starving it?
Well, that's touching. It's true,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at your tree, and knowing how plants grow, either if you don't feed them or you don't nourish them, they die.
Yeah.
So if you're talking to people, individuals, maybe men or women, whoever is listening and watching, are there one simple thing you would offer that somebody could do to get started or to make a difference that they can feel good about?
I think that my advice to the listeners would be, remember that the more you give, the more you have. That people think when it's transactional, if I give you this, then I have less. And or if I give you this, then I'm going to sit back and wait for you to give back to me before I consider giving to you again. But when you give with a spirit of generosity, and it's not based on receiving, it's based on just doing this because it's going to add value to your partner's life. That really changes the equation altogether. And what will happen is it's like a boomerang and it comes swinging back very, very quickly. You'll see that your relationship gets closer, your partner warms up, and that there's a different level of interaction and things feel more comfortable, that whatever tension might have been there starts to dissipate. It really does shift the energy. And I guess I would say for men specifically that the book is going to give you in clear terms, because there's the parable and then there's the practice, the second half of the book. And the second half of the book gets into detail about how to take these secrets forward in your relationship. And it has a lot of client stories, thanks to clients who are willing to let us change their names and use the material, that really illuminate the very things that happen in marriages. So for guys, I would say, if you're looking for what to do, it's all there in a list. It's just really black and white. We have groups in the Midwest that we've done trainings for, because we do a lot of trainings. We have a specific training online that you can access on our website that's called gogivermarriage.com. And the training is called Living the 5 Secrets to Lasting Love. And what we do is we go into a deep dive on the 5 secrets, and we go into a deep dive on the opposites of the 5 secrets, so that you can kind of see the places where you might be investing a little more in the dark side versus the lighter side. And you can start to course correct and start to really practice the secrets. And then there's plenty of time in the workshop for interaction. And that's always really where the fun starts. So the things that I feel like I want people to know the most is that it's a lot simpler than you think to change the tone of your marriage, because you are the one that's changing your tune toward the marriage.
That's lovely. I know sometimes couples will tell me, well, you can't change it unless we change it. You know, it takes 2 to tango. And I often say, no, it actually only takes 1 to tango. It's you can tango by yourself. It'll
That's
work.
great.
And tangoing as is what I capture from the essence of what you're saying, is that really we can change by us doing our part, which is really,
Yes,
in the scheme of things, all we can do. And so I want to just comment on your little the coming together of the 2 circles, that I think is
Yes.
such a wonderful image, and that the piece in between where the overlap is the us. And there's a little story I kind of end my little piece with, that my wife Carlin, when we first got together and we were, you know, committed and gotten to know, fell in love, and now we were a couple. And along the way, I think probably in the first year, she said, I don't know how it came up, but she said, you know, I can't commit to you, but I can commit to us. And at first I was, what? You know, you can't commit to me? And it was really a shock. It was like, wait a minute, what am I doing in a relationship with a woman who can't commit to me? You know, well, I can commit to you. And it took me a while to, I mean, nothing she said kind of, but intuitively, I think I got it immediately, that there was.
That's so interesting.
It didn't mean she wasn't committing to me, that she didn't love me, she didn't care about me. Oh, it's going to be like the other marriages. She's going to leave me, all my fears. But it was a recognition that you know, so clearly describe as this larger entity that's a different level, that if we can put energy into that, then each of us get nourished and we get taken care of.
That's such an extraordinary insight on her part. It's really interesting.
Yeah, she's a smart lady.
What a shock.
Yeah, I'm glad we found each other. So you mentioned a little bit about where people can find you or how they can connect. Could you say again where and how people can connect with you and your work and
Sure.
learn more about what you're offering, and hopefully go get the Go Giver marriage book? I mean, come on, it's I can't imagine anybody who would say, what, well, why not? Well, geez, there's
Just
so many good
rewind and
things
listen
you have
again,
ahead
right?
of you. Get the support.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So the website is simply the title of the book without the. It's just gogivermarriage.com. Gogivermarriage.com. And you'll see the book on there, of course, and a little bit about the book, an excerpt for the book, and a little bit about ourselves. You can contact either one of us, both of us, through the site. And the total staff who reads all those emails is, you're looking at them, it's us. So you can be as private or personal as you want. It's just us who's going to see it. We do offer the workshop that Anna mentioned through that site. We're also going to begin in the fall of 2022. We're going to begin a program we call the Go Giver Marriage Coaches Training Program. And what that is simply is, it's a program for training people who want to coach this material, coach it in a group setting, coach it one-on-one. And it's not marriage therapy training. We're not raising a generation of marriage therapists. It's individual coaching. And so people who already have a coaching practice could incorporate this as part of their curriculum, part of their approach, or people who want to begin a coaching practice or have some other similar practice. Maybe they are therapists, or maybe they are, high school football coaches, or I guess college in this case. And that program will be, as I said, in the fall, also in our website. And then Anna's practice is also in the site. So it's pretty much one-stop shopping. You'll find us there.
Super. Anna, anything you'd want to say by wrapping up?
Oh, just thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure to have the conversation. And
Yes.
yeah, there's just we really appreciate you having us here. Thank you.
Well, it's been my pleasure. I hope we can get together again. I a lot of things that you're putting out that I want to learn more about and share with our community. So thank you again, and we'll say goodbye for now.